I am SDSU Extension Livestock Business Management Field Specialist, Heather Gessner. The USDA-Farm Service Agency released information regarding the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program on Tuesday, May 21, 2020. This information has been anticipated by various agricultural producers in South Dakota and across the nation. My goal in this presentation is to provide you with the most current information available on the CFAP program in general, provide information on what the application requirements for each covered commodity group are, and provide guidance or ideas on what could be used as verification documents. As producers work through the CFAP process, I encourage them to work with their local FSA staff to ensure all components of the program are followed and completed properly and in a timely manner. The Coronavirus Food Assistance Program is one part of the CARES Act and has two components. The one I will cover in this presentation is the direct support to agriculture producers. For your reference, the other component is the Farmers to Families program. That program will purchase and distribute agricultural products to those in need. The program will purchase $461 million worth of fresh produce, $317 million of dairy products, $258 million worth of meat products, and an additional $175 million will be spent on combination boxes purchased for distribution. The CFAP payments funds will come from two sources. The CARES Act provided $9.5 billion, and the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act, commonly referred to as CCC, provided an additional $6.5 billion. The CARES Act funds were allocated to compensate for losses due to price declines between mid-January 2020 and mid-April 2020, and for specialty crops that were shipped and spoiled or unpaid for. The CCC funds provide compensation for losses due to ongoing market distribution disruptions due to COVID-19. For more information on the formulas and how the numbers were derived, you can go to the www.farmers.gov/CFAP webpage. We are not going to cover that discussion in today's presentation. Enrollment for CFAP opens May 26, 2020. When producers visit their local FSA office, they will provide the number of animals, bushels, or weights of the animals or products they are signing up. However, unlike traditional indemnity programs, this is a self-certification program. Verification documents are not part of the application. Producers must keep in mind that spot checks will be done. My suggestion to all producers participating in the program is that they create a file with their supporting documents, make copies of the information used to determine the numbers. Prosecution under criminal and civil fraud statutes may occur if there are discrepancies in the verification documents and the amount reported in the application. Questions have been brought up regarding funding availability. One way the program has been created to mitigate the issue of funds running out is to pay the first 80% of the amount to the producer upon application. Then, when and if there are funds remaining in the coffers, the program funds remaining will be distributed. Keep in mind that these funds all fall under the payment limitations established by USDA. The staff at the FSA office can help answer payment limit questions. What other elements are needed for application? Basically, the same program eligibility requirements of all other USDA programs are in place for CFAP. There are 6 forms available on the farmers.gov website every applicant will need to fill out. The basic information includes verification of the members of the farm or ranch, 2 income forms to verify maximum payment limitations are not exceeded and that the individual's income comes from farming, ranching, and forestry. A form ensures highly erodible land is not being farmed, and a couple forms provide basic contact information and bank information so direct deposits can be made. Those familiar with USDA programs likely have these forms filled out and on file. If you are new to the programs, the FSA staff will help you when you make your application. The CFAP program includes payments for non-specialty crops, livestock, wool, dairy, and specialty crops. In order to be included in the program, the commodities in each of these categories must have had a 5% or greater price reduction or had losses due to COVID supply chains and face significant additional marketing costs due to COVID-19. Let's cover non-specialty crops first. To start, eligible crops include malting barley, canola, corn, upland cotton, millet, oats, sorghum, soybeans, germ wheat, and hard red spring wheat. Payments for each of those commodities will be based on the January 15, 2020 inventory that was subject to price risk. I take this qualifier to mean that grain in storage, but not price protected by any type of pricing contract. To determine payment, a calculation will be done using the 2019 production totals divided by 2 times the CARES Act rate. Another calculation will be done based on the January 15th, 2020 inventory times the CC rate. The payment will be based on the smaller of these two amounts. As part of the application, producers must provide both their 2019 production and January 15th inventory. Sources of verification are not included in the information package. I put together a list of items producers may have or be able to get copies of, including crop insurance and FSA documents from 2019, sales receipts, bin measurements, feed records, and invoices for custom harvesting may be some of the documents accepted as production and storage verification. This is not an official list and not guaranteed to be acceptable proof of production or inventory. Talk to the staff at your FSA office for additional ideas or preferred documentation. Keeping copies of the information utilized to determine production inventory in a file will assist the producers if they are chosen for a spot check in the future. The payment rates for the commodities varies. As mentioned early in the presentation, the funds provided in CFAP are coming from 2 sources. For each category and commodity, I am showing the amount available from each source. To determine payment, for example, corn producer applicants will multiply 50% of their 2019 production by 32 cents from the CARES Act and their January 15th inventory by 35 cents from the CCC. The smaller total value will be used to make the payment. Moving to the livestock category. Livestock producer eligibility includes a statement that the applicant must have an ownership interest in the animals, in addition to the 5% price decline. Thus, contract feeders are not eligible for the program. Eligible commodities and classes of each are listed on this slide. 2 classes of hogs are eligible, those less than 120 pounds and those over 120 pounds. Eligible sheep must be less than 2 years of age, and cattle are broken into 5 categories. Feeder cattle less than 600 pounds, which includes 2020 spring-born calves, feeder cattle greater than 600 pounds, slaughter cattle, fed cattle, slaughter cattle, mature cattle, and then all other cattle that are not dairy. Most of these categories are easy to understand based on the weights and ages listed. Slaughter cattle, fed cattle is intended to cover fed cattle that should have gone to market. However, due to market unavailability and disruption, they are still being held by the producer. The official ruling indicates that cattle on an average weigh more than 1,400 pounds and yield a carcass 800 pounds or more. Those weights may be problematic for heifers on feed, as they generally have lighter finished weights than steer counterparts, and for regions of the country where finished weights do not traditionally reach 1,400 pounds. Talk to the FSA staff members to determine the appropriate classification for your animals. Additionally, slaughter cattle, mature cattle is the category for cull bulls and cows, and all other cattle accounts for cows in the breeding herd, breeding bulls, and all other unpriced cattle inventory, as long as they are not animals owned for dairy production. Livestock payments for the Categories indicated are going to be based on the sum of the number of animals sold January 15th through April 15th, 2020, plus the highest inventory number of animals owned between April 16th and May 14th, 2020. As part of the application, producers must be able to provide the following information. First, the total sales of eligible livestock by species and class for the January to April time period, and inventory numbers by species and class for the April to May time period. Again, there is not an official indication of what will be considered valid forms of documentation. I have started a list here to help the thought process. Sales receipts for animals sold, inventory records drafted for financial statements, sale catalogs listing animals available for sale, calving and breeding records for cow herd and calf counts, or vet records that indicate the number of animals processed or heifers bangs vaccinated may qualify. This list is not guaranteed to qualify as documentation, and it is again suggested that all materials used in determination of the inventory be stored for potential spot checks. Payment rates for livestock classes are listed on this slide. Each rate is based on a per animal basis. The number of livestock sold between January 15th and April 15th will be multiplied by the CARES Act rate, and the inventory on hand April 15 through May 15, 2020 will be multiplied by the CC rate. A cattle example, the number of feeder steers weighing 725 pounds sold March 1st will be multiplied by $139, while the number of cows in the breeding herd on April 20th will be multiplied by $33. Moving to the dairy industry and milk. To be eligible for CFAP payments, the dairy operation must have had milk production in the first quarter of 2020. The payments will include milk that needed to be dumped and excludes any milk production that was priced under a forward contract. Payments to dairy producers will be based on the pounds of milk produced in the first quarter of 2020. Verification of the amount of milk produced and sold may be relatively easy for some producers. Sales receipts will show the required information. In instances where milk had to be dumped, the records may be harder to provide. Historical production records, cow production records, cow inventories, and third-party verification of the milk that was dumped may be forms of acceptable documentation. Please talk with your local FSA office about acceptable forms of verification. And then keep a copy of these documents used during your application process in case of spot checks. The payment for dairy is a bit different than some of the other categories. The first part of the payment is based on the first quarter of 2020. Production will be multiplied by the CARES Act payment rate of $4.71. The second part of the payment again is based on first quarter production times a multiplier adjustment factor. That factor is 101.4. The adjustment factor times the CCC payment rate of 147 brings the per hundredweight payment on all milk produced in the first quarter 2020 to $6.20. As the producer makes calculation on the payment they could receive from CFAP, keep in mind that the $250,000 payment limitation for a single member operation would still be applicable. Wool. Wool production eligibility will be based on inventory on hand January 15th that was not forward priced. The payment will be based on the smaller of 50% of the 2019 total production or the unpriced inventory as of January 15th, 2020. Part of the application will need to include the 2019 production information as it is the basis for determination for eligibility. Additionally, the amount of pounds in inventory on January 15th will also need to be included. Depending on the breed of sheep raised, production verification may be easier to come by for some than others. Wool breeders may have detailed grading sheets, sales receipts, and other documents to verify production. Others may need to include invoices from shearing to verify the number of heads shorn, scale receipts of the inventory on hand, or other such documentation. Again, keep in mind the potential for spot checks on the documentation used to determine production and inventory. Wool payments will be based on a per pound rate for graded clean wool and non-graded grease wool. The last category to cover is the specialty crops area. To be eligible for CFAP payments, specialty crops are broken into 3 categories. For the first category, the crop needed to have a 5% or greater price decline during mid-January to mid-April time period. For category 2, applications are for those producers who shipped produce, but the produce spoiled before market due to the loss of a marketing channel. And category 3 applications are for produce that was harvested but did not leave the farm, or mature crops that were unharvested or destroyed due to the loss of marketing channels. The specialty crop list is too long to include on one screen, so here are the crops from almonds through green onions and the categories they qualify for. And here's the list of eligible specialty crops, oranges to watermelons, and their qualifying categories. Payments will be made to producers that did not have agreed upon prices set through forward contracts, agreements, or other binding documents. Items needed by specialty crop producers varies by the category the crop falls under. If you grow any of the eligible crops, please make sure you know what kind of verification you need to have. Category 1 requires a bill of sale that documents the crop, quantity, and price received. Category 2 for produce that met their contractual obligations for delivery but did not receive payment for their production. Documentation from the buyer explaining the non-payment or other records that validate the non-payment are required. For category 3, for those producers that were unable to sell harvested crops or had to destroy crops in the field and do not have specific listed verification items available. The list of records I have listed here are not necessarily FSA approved or guaranteed to be accepted. And as I do not have experience with specialty crop production, my understanding of the resources available to the producer is limited. Please work with your local FSA office to ensure you are able to best represent the crop you grow and have in storage. Payment rates for each category of loss varies. Recall the list of specialty crops we looked at earlier, as that determines the rate production will be multiplied by to determine payment. This slide shows almonds through romaine lettuce. And here's the list of mushrooms through watermelons based on categories that they qualified for. The program rules specifically exclude some commodities. I have listed those on this slide. Excluded commodities include sheep more than 2 years of age, eggs and layers, soft and hard red winter wheat, white wheat, rice, flax, rye, peanuts, feed barley, extra long staple cotton, alfalfa, forage crops, hemp, and tobacco. As we went through the list of commodities covered, your commodity may not be listed. USDA is open to considering additional crops. If you believe your commodity has had a 5% or greater price decline between January and April 2020 and face additional marketing costs due to COVID-19, please visit the farmers.gov/CFAP website. There is an official link there to submit information and comments. There's a lot of information available from commodity groups, extension, and everyone in between regarding this program. The official webpage for the program is www.farmers.gov/CFAP. I found the site very easy to navigate for each of the categories we have listed and discussed today. Source of information for this presentation were the two websites that I have listed. They are publicly available and very easy to navigate, and I would encourage you to visit them. I'd also like to thank the South Dakota FSA staff that I contacted with many questions, and their answers helped increase the availability and effectiveness of this presentation. Thank you for following along today. This is a trying time and one that also has brought out the best in a lot of people. I hope you've encountered those individuals if you needed them. Here's my contact information, including my Facebook page. If you'd like to follow that, please do. Please let me know if you have questions regarding the CFAP program. I do not promise to know all the answers, but I promise to help you find someone that knows the answers to your questions.